Now it's the time in the show where I tell you what a certain YouTuber got up to this week. Now, last week, and I think the week before as well, I was telling you about Dan Howell, and a lot of you enjoyed that. But we really do want to get a little bit more variety in this show and talk about, you know, a broader spectrum of YouTubers. We can't just talk about Dan Howell every week. That's ridiculous. So I've come up with a computer program that automatically generates randomly a bunch of YouTubers' names, and I'm going to just activate that now. There we go, beep boop. And this will generate a name of a YouTuber that I will talk about. It is Dan Howell. It's Dan Howell. I didn't even put his name into the program. I don't know how that's... I guess we're doing Dan Howell Watch. It's time for Dan Howell Watch. Welcome to Dan Howell Watch. I'm Mirando Ballinger. What's Dan been up to this week? Well, it was the time of year where Dan has his annual Christmas party, where he gets together with everyone he works with and boogies into the night. Now this year, everyone that Dan works with was going to be at the Christmas party. Phil Lester, everyone was going to be there, and it was set to be the best one yet. So Dan got to the venue, he got in okay, even though the bouncer said to him, "Oh, you look a little bit young, son." He said, "I promise I'm a grown boy." He said, "Okay, you," and did that thing where he like nuzzled him on the head, and Dan was like, "Get off, man." And then he went inside and he met Phil, and he said, "Phil, so great to see you at the party. I didn't even know you were coming." And Phil was like, "We live together, Dan, we got ready together. You knew I was coming to this party." And Dan said, "Okay." Anyway, the night went on, they had a bit of a boogie, they had a bit of a drink, but then all of a sudden, Phil went to the toilet. He was like, "Oh, excuse me, I want to go to the toilet," and disappeared. And Dan was like, "All right," dancing away to Mambo number 5. And all of a sudden, who should come around the corner but Father Christmas himself? Oh my gosh! I forgot what he sounds like. "Oh my gosh," said Dan, "it's Father Christmas. Where's Phil? He's gonna miss Father Christmas." But Phil was nowhere to be seen. There was only this Father Christmas character. But actually, if you looked in Father Christmas's eye, there was a certain familiar twinkle, and his hair looked a little bit fringy. And Dan thought, wait a minute, is that my friend Phil? But it wasn't! It was a criminal! It was a criminal dressed as Santa, and he had a sword! He had a goddamn sword, and he tried to get Dan, and Phil came out of nowhere, and he hit him with a hammer. He hit him with a hammer, and he killed him. He killed the criminal. Phil's in court now. It's out of control. This has been Dan Howell Watch. Great episode of Dan Howell Watch. Really blisteringly realistic, confronting, but educational. Everything you want out of a DHW. But even I, at my mansion, at my palatial mansion, I don't want people turning up on my doorstep asking them to sign, you know, news. You gotta respect people's privacy. It's not that hard, guys. It's not that hard. You know who would never turn up at someone's house? Flynn Rider. Because Flynn Rider's a good bloke. Hashtag Flynn Rider from Tangled. Okay. That's the stories. Well, now it's... Now it's time for YouTuber Watch, the segment where every week I always talk about a completely different YouTuber and what they got up to this week. And this week I want to try something a little bit zany and a little bit different, and I'd actually like to try talking about Dan Howell. Like, a lot of you probably haven't heard of him. He's an up-and-coming YouTube star. He's 15 years old. He's really talented. He's really got the moxie, and I'm going to try it out. Here's Dan Howell Watch for the very first time. Welcome to Dan Howell Watch. I'm Flynn Rider, and you better believe I'm from Tangled. What's Dan been up to this week? Well, Dan decided it's finally time to clean his room. So he set aside a weekend, and he cleared his plans. He was going to be a YouTube boy. He said, "No, I'm going to be a cleaning boy." He went into his room, and he said, "Time to clean everything up." And as he was walking around his room, did a bit of hoovering, did a bit of tidying, did a bit of dusting, and he started to find fun curios and artifacts from his life. He found his fringe wig that he used to wear when he was on camera. Dan, of course, always shaves his head, but wears a series of wigs on camera. Every fan knows this. He found some old whiskers from when he used to do whiskers, and he found a large bejeweled ceremonial hunting knife from his days in the Serengeti. But then, all of a sudden, he heard a little bit of a rustle at the door. And who should come in? It was Father Christmas! The same Father Christmas from last week's episode of Dan Howell Watch. "Oh boy," said Dan. But then he remembered that last week, it turned out that wasn't Father Christmas. It was actually a criminal. So he was a little bit wary. And this time it was also still a criminal. Oh no! And then Phil came in and he had a hammer and he killed him. He killed him again. "Phil, why do you keep murdering people?" said Dan. And Phil said, his famous catchphrase, "Hey, if you can't kill time, kill a man." This has been Dan Howell Watch. You never see the double criminal Santa coming. That's the magic of Dan Howell Watch. I'd just like to pause the show for a minute to draw your attention to this, which was in the room before we came in. And I guess I have a lot of questions. I don't know if this was some kind of ritual or sacrifice or something, but this baby has been looking at me the entire show, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. Tavin? Is that... What's that? You want to hear more YouTube news stories? Sounds like you're in the right place, pal. Learned at all. So if there's any lesson we can take from this, is that there are no consequences anymore, nothing matters, and the world we live in is a giant hellscape. Merry Christmas! It's still Christmas, right? What day is this? You boy, what day is this? Is it Christmas Day? Is there still time for me to repent my ways? Will ghosts visit me? Hello? Oh, there's no one here. Never anyone here. I don't know how to get out of this room. So those were the top 5 most scandalous things that rocked the YouTube community this year. I cannot wait to see the scandals that will befall us in 2019. No, wait, sorry, I got that wrong. I can wait. I very much can wait to find out what those scandals are. But 2018 was not all bad. We can't pretend it was all just terrible things. There were nice things that happened in the YouTube community. For example, let's take a little look back at what 2018 meant to a certain YouTuber we all know and love. That's right, Dan Howell. It's time for Dan Howell Watch 2018 edition. Welcome to Dan Howell Watch. I'm so tired. What's Dan been up to in 2018? Well, I'll tell you in the form of an ancient rhyme. Pan flute music, please. Dum-dum-dum-dum-dum. In January, he went to the zoo and he had a nice time. In February, he went to the circus. That does not rhyme. In March, Dan killed a man, but he got off. In April, he went abroad and he bought a car. In May, I regret doing this as a rhyme, but he went to Korea and had a nice time, North Korea. In June, Dan met his very best friend. He's called Phil Lester, and they're friends till the end. In July, Dan bought a horse and he named it Death. It was an ironic nickname and he had minty breath. In August, Dan went along to the golden sands of the beach and there he saw a crab and he was ambivalent about it. In September, Dan joined the army as a medic. Someone is doing this to me off screen, which I think means great job, go slower. In October, Dan went on a tour called the Interactive Introverts. In November, Dan celebrated Christmas way too early. And when December came, and this is the time for me to really redeem this whole thing with a perfect finishing rhyme. When December came, he saw Dan Howell Watch and said, "I'm calling my lawyers." Hooray! Dan Howell's 2018. Thank you to anyone who is still watching. Was that actually good?
It was, but that's why it was.
Yeah, but that's why. Take her for every penny she's got. I don't care how many Charlie's Angels movies she's been in. She is but a human like I. Bring down Diaz. Please, Mum, please, I'm begging you. Now it's time for a section of the show that's a little bit experimental. It's called YouTuber Watch, and it's where every week I tell you a deadly serious story about a YouTuber and what they got up to this week. Sometimes I'm criticized actually for how extremely serious and real these stories are. And as you know, every week it's a completely different creator. Sorry, I said YouTuber before, Alfie. What I meant to say was creator. And last week, you know, we did someone, and next week we'll do someone else. This week, I've just gone through a random list of YouTubers, and a name has popped up. I've not heard it before. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Danielle Howell. Danielle Howell. So I'm just going to give that guy a go. I think it's Guy, and this is Danielle Howell Watch. Hi, welcome to Dan Howell Watch. I'm Sandra Bullock. What's Dan been up to this week? Well, Dan had a bit of a strange week, a bit of a wacky week. Basically, he went to a normal doctor's appointment, and as he was leaving the hospital, a virus or a kind of curse took over the earth whereby everyone started killing themselves obsessively. Their eyes would go weird and then they would kill themselves, forcing everyone to wear blindfolds lest they see the monsters and die themselves. Now, Dan, being quite clever, he thought, what if I get a bird or birds and put it in a box, and that way if the monsters are nearby, the birds will make noises and I'll know if the monsters are near. Now, unfortunately, there weren't very many birds around. The only one he could find was just this massive, ridiculous eagle. It was like this big. So he grabbed this eagle, and bear in mind he had a blindfold on because he didn't want to see this monsters and die. So he grabbed the eagle and he had a shoebox, and the shoebox was not that big, but he was trying to cram this eagle into this box. The eagle was like, and he's like, come on, man, I don't want to die from the monsters. So he's like trying to force down the lid of this eagle into this box, and he's carrying it around. And then at one point he's in this canoe with these two children called boy and girl. He found these kids, it's a long story. And he's trying to do these rapids, and he's like, don't worry, we're going to make it to the sanctuary, it's going to be safe. But meanwhile this eagle's like, and he's like, please, I'm trying to have dramatic tension where you don't know which child I'm going to pick. And he's like, this freaking eagle is making some, and he doesn't even know if the monsters are near because it's making noise all the time. It's one of the most useless bird boxes you could have. Anyway, long story short, they all died. This has been Dan Howell Watch. If you haven't seen Bird Box, by the way, that will probably have been quite a disturbing story. And yet it really happened. And that's the wildest part. It's all true, as it is every week. Now it's time for a part of the show called YouTuber Watch, where every week I focus in on one particular YouTuber and tell you what they got up to this week. Now this week I'm trying out a brand new YouTuber. I don't know much about him. I believe he's from North Korea. He's called Dan Howell, and let's see how this one goes. Welcome to Dan Howell Watch. I'm Den Townsend. What's Dan been up to this week? Well, Dan had a bit of a strange week. His friends kept coming up to him and they seemed annoyed with him. They said things like, Dan, why did you knock over my chicken coop? Or, Dan, I noticed that you hid my watercolor paints. And Dan said, I did none of these things. But as the week progressed, all his various friends, Phil Lester, others, kept coming up to him and accusing him of doing naughty things. And Dan said, this is strange. I am famously a good and kind boy. Why do people keep thinking I've done naughty things? But then, one day, he walked into the room and looked at himself in the mirror. And he sort of checked his fringe and his t-shirt with the eclipse circle on it, and he said, yeah, it looks pretty good. But then, suddenly, the reflection moved in a way he didn't move. And he realized he wasn't looking in a mirror, but looking at his evil identical twin, Dan Howell. It was you, wasn't it? Dan said to Dan. You was the one doing the naughty things and pretending you was me. Yes, Dan, it was indeed me, Dan Howell. I am your biological birth twin. Everyone knows this. A true fan would know that you have a twin. I can't let you do this. You're sullying my good name, said Dan in his famous voice. Just then, who should walk in through the door but Phil Lester? Gasp, said Phil. There's two Downs. What am I to do? He's not the best actor. Quick, Phil, you've got to kill the evil twin. But which one is the evil twin? Said Phil. He's the evil twin, said Dan, evilly. No, he's the evil twin, said Dan, non-evilly. Oh, I don't know what to do, said Phil, holding his Tommy gun to each. Phil had a Tommy gun to each of them. Oh, gee whiz, I don't know which one to kill. But then all of a sudden, Dan took off his mask, and it was a criminal. It was a criminal, and he had a sword. And then Phil was like, oh no, and he took out his sword. They had a big sword fight, and they both perished. Except Phil lived. This has been Dan Howell Watch. I know people like it when I do the joke stories, but I think it was getting a bit silly, some of the stories I was making up. So this week I reached out to Dan and I found out a real story because I thought that would be a bit more mature, because that's what we try and be on this show, mature. It would be insane to advertise something to kids in a dishonest way. And that's why I only ever drink Diet Pepsi when I'm doing YouTuber news, the only drink that's both Diet and Pepsi. It barely burns when I drink it. Ugh, whatever they're paying me, it's not enough. What if we get sponsored with Pepsi now, though? Bring me my usual cup of ram's blood. I just advertised it as a joke. Now it's time for a section of the show called YouTuber Watch, where I tell you every week what a different YouTuber has been up to. We've had all kinds of YouTubers, old, young, big, small, human, Reptile. But there's one YouTuber we've never done on the show. It was suggested to me last week in the comments. I've not heard of this guy. I think he's an up-and-coming guy. I believe he's part robot, but I don't think that's a problem. He's called what's he called? Derek? No, Dan. Derek Howell. Dan Howell. Let's give him a go. This is Dan Howell Watch. Welcome to Dan Howell Watch. I'm Benedict, the 17th. What's Dan been up to this week? Well, Dan was taking a little bit of a holiday vacay to Old Italia, Mamma Mia, and he was wandering around some old church that he'd stumbled across with his good friend, Phil Leister. I've not heard of this guy before, but he was wandering around with this guy, Phil Lester, having a fun time, looking at paintings, looking at big ceilings, going ooh and ah and ha. Then at one point he saw a door and he said, hey, I've never seen a door I didn't want to walk through. So he strolled through the door and then he tripped over and accidentally fell onto a throne and a hat fell on him and he was accidentally ordained Pope. So Dan is the Pope now, which is actually, practically speaking, a nightmare for him because he's got stuff to do. He's got tours to do, YouTube videos to make. And people keep coming to him and being like, can you do some Pope stuff? And he's like, well, I don't really know. Like, I don't, CBA, TBH, you know what I mean? And they're like, Holy Father, please. We need answers about the world, namaste, and all this stuff. They say namaste in the Vatican, right? And Dan's like, well, I guess, my first decree, apart from my producer to stop dropping her phone, is probably for there to be world peace. And then there actually was, and there actually was. And I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, oh, let me guess, a criminal's going to burst in now, and there was a criminal with a sword. No, that criminal went to prison, and he got the chair. That criminal's gone. All right, you're not going to hear about him in the stories anymore. Or are you? Oh, suspense for next week. All hail Pope Dan. Great episode of Dan Howell Watch. Really made me think about my spirituality, because I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. Pretty hard to have a sex tape if you've never had sex. As I've always said, my famous quote. And if you'd like to buy that quote on a t-shirt, it's very simple. All you have to do is go to a t-shirt making website, put that quote on it, and then order one for yourself, because I'm not doing it. Tony baby, I appreciate the suggestion, but I've never heard of this kid. What's his name? Dan Howell? No one's gonna watch a segment about some kid called Dan Howell, Tony. Listen, you've been my agent for 20 years, and you're real. That's my favorite thing about you. But I can't dedicate a whole segment of my popular show to some kid called Dan Howell. No, I won't hear it. Sorry, just talking to my agent there, Tony Stafford. He's a real man. Now it's time for a section of the show called YouTuber Watch, where I zero in on one YouTuber and talk about what they got up to this week. I was going to talk about someone else, but Tony's never let me down, and he wants me to talk about this person called Dan Howell, so I guess just for this week only, this is, I guess, Dan Howell Watch? Hi, welcome to Dan Howell Watch. I'm Justin Trudeau. What's Dan been up to this week? Well, Dan was engaging in his favorite pastime, tap dancing down by the marina. Yes, Dan made his way down to the local wharf to have a little tap dance in exchange for strangers' pennies. Now, of course, he doesn't need the money. Dan's a famous and rich YouTube boy, but he loves to dance and he loves the admiration of local seafaring folk. So he went down to the marina, got to a nice spot near the ocean, and started doing his little jig. "Oh, watch me go," he said in his typical voice. "Watch me go as I tip and top for all of the boys and girls." But then behind him, he felt a comical tweet, tweet, like tap on the shoulder, and who was there but an evil octopus that grabbed him in his arms and plunged him into the depths of the sea. Now Dan, of course, being a free diving champion, was able to hold his breath for up to 8 minutes. But the octopus had him down there for 8 minutes 10, and Dan started to feel a little bit woozy. But then all of a sudden, the octopus was struck with a sword, which chopped off all its limbs. "Who could have done this?" said Dan, in a quite aquatic voice. "Who could have saved me?" And who should swim over to him but a figure in a bright orange jumpsuit. A figure that seemed strangely familiar. What is that? With a sword. It was a criminal. The criminal from previous episodes of Dan Howell Watch. The criminal had saved Dan, and he took him in his strong, crime-ridden arms and carried him back up to the marina and laid him down. "Why? Why?" said Dan. "Why did you save me?" "Oh, sweet Dan," said the criminal, "if there's going to be anyone that kills you, it's going to be me. I'm not going to let an octopus do it." "Ha ha ha ha," said Dan. "Ha ha ha ha," said the criminal, and they had a lovely afternoon together. Then the criminal did try and kill Dan, but Dan did a karate chop into the neck knocked him out instantly. This has been Dan Howell Watch. Great episode of Dan Howell Watch. Really enjoyed that one. The addition of the octopus only made it more realistic. Now it's time for a section of the show called YouTuber Watch, where I zero in on a different YouTuber every week and tell you a real story from their real life. Now, last week I did someone called Dan Howell. I've never heard of this kid before. A lot of people in the comments said, hey, listen, in spite of the fact that this kid is virtually unknown, I quite enjoyed your story, very insightful. Some people even said, why don't you do Dan Howell again this week? That's absolutely insane. As you know, YouTuber Watch is a completely different YouTuber Watch is a completely different person every week. The mere idea of repeating a YouTuber sends shivers down my spine, fills me with bile. I would never repeat a YouTuber. Now it's time for this week's YouTuber, which I've got written down here. Oh no, I seem to have deleted the Word document, but without the information in front of me. How am I to do YouTuber Watch this week? I do have this old other YouTuber Watch left over from last week. I wrote a second Dan Howell story. I researched a second Dan Howell story. I guess I could read this as well, but to do Dan Howell twice in 2 weeks? So long. Here's Dan Howell Watch. Hi, welcome to Dan Howell Watch. I'm Tilly Coleman. What's Dan been up to this week? Well, as you know, Valentine's Day is nearly upon us, so Dan celebrated the way he always does, with his own bespoke special holiday, Howlentine's Day, where he celebrates self-love by taking himself to dinner and then having a very long bath. So Dan went along to his favourite restaurant, McDonald's, and he ordered himself his favourite meal, steak, and then a lobster on top of that, and then another steak on top of that. It's very expensive and disgusting, and Dan was having a lovely time. He had a little glass of vino, he had a rouge, he had a little glass of blanc, he had a rosé on top. He was getting extremely drunk by himself, and that's self-love, and that's okay. Anyway, he was having a great time, he was enjoying his meal. His steak was a little bit tough, so he said, Garçon, wait, Garçon! You know how his voice sounds. Garçon, this steak is a little tough. Please, could you cut it for me? So the waiter came over, he's like, sir, of course I will cut this steak. And he took out a big knife. In fact, the knife was about this long, actually. He took it out of a sort of a scabbard on his side. Kind of like I guess you'd call it a sword. And he cut the steak with this sword, and he put it back. And that seems totally normal to me, and I'm sure that won't crop up later in the story. How long has this been going? About 25 minutes? So the orphans came and he bought them all a lovely spaghetti dinner. He didn't pay for them though. He did leave them with the bill at the end. And he said, this has truly been the best Howlentine's Day of all. And then the criminal came with the sword, trying to kill Dan. He swung for his head. He nearly got him. He got his burnt hair. He's oh God, not again. This criminal is always trying to murder me. And then who should pop out of the table? He'd had this very strange flower arrangement on the table that looked awful lot like a man's head painted to look like flowers. And it was Phil. He'd been there the whole time. And Phil jumped out and he said, I'll protect you, Dan. Karate chopped the criminal. The criminal's like, ow. Because Phil, he's not a strong guy, particularly. So he kind of just bounced off his neck. The criminal's like, that's barely stopped me. Now I'm going to murder both of you. But luckily, Dan woke up and it was a dream. It was Inception, in fact. This has been Dan Howell Watch. Hashtag love the rat. If you guys also love the rat, let me know. Tweet at PopBuzz directly, at PopBuzz, saying love the rat. All right, moving on. No, the lead character in Ratatouille is called Ratatouille. That's why the film's called that. It's named after him, Ratatouille the rat. Now it's time for a section of the show called YouTuber Watch, where I zero in on a certain YouTuber and tell you what they got up to this week. Now, last week we did someone called Dan Howell. That went down very badly. All of you said we've never heard of this person, don't know who Dan Howell is, please never do that again. I listened to you, and of course every week we do a different person. So this week it's time for Filled In. Hi, welcome to Filled In. I'm Dan Howell. What's Phil been up to this week? Well, Phil did one of his favourite activities, sitting down to write in his diary. It helps him refresh his mind. It helps him reflect on his life. So he sat down and started writing, and in his head was his inner monologue, which of course speaks in the same voice as Phil's speaking voice. So he said, Dear Diary, what a tumultuous month it's been for me and my best friend Dan Howell. Truly, Dan has never had a more rough time than he has in 2019. No matter where he goes, whether it's dancing down at the wharf, going to a restaurant for Howlentine's Day, or even just trying to pick a peach in the local peach orchard, it seems like he keeps being attacked by a maniac with a sword. I truly care about him. He is my brother in arms and in charms.
and I wish I could do more to protect him. I have tried on many occasions to disable, nay, kill this criminal, and have actually gone to jail several times. As you know, if you watch YouTube News, my favourite show, and I do approve of the show. Please don't sue me, Phil. But now it seems that I can protect Dan no longer, and I'm gonna go to join the Brazilian Navy. Oh, plot twist, guys. Phil's gonna join the Navy. And Phil signed his name, Philip Tulip Lester, and he put it down, and he said, great, another successful diary entry. And he turned to look out the window, and the camera panned away from him, over to his wall, where sat, on a little display case, was a rather noticeable and shiny sword. And engraved on the blade said, Phil Lester owns this sword, and it's the only sword that's featured in the stories, and it is the criminal's sword, and the criminal is Phil Lester. And isn't that a plot twist? M. Night Shyamalan. What's going to happen? Find out next week on Filled In. Lovely. Wow, what a great episode of Filled In, am I right, gang? And so factually accurate, one of my favourite things about it. What's going to happen on the show? Well, of course, we'll never find out because, as we've established on YouTuber Watch, we do a different YouTuber every week. So I will never return to Phil Lester or Dan Howell, whoever this character is, this clown. So that story will never be resolved, and we're all fine and dandy with that. Now it's time for YouTuber Watch, the section of the show where I focus in on one YouTuber and tell you what they got up to this week. Last week we did Phil Lester, and a bunch of you really appreciated that. You know, thanks Ben for covering a small up-and-coming indie YouTuber. And now, of course, I'll be doing an entirely different YouTuber. We do a different person every week. This week we'll be doing Phil Lester. It's time for Filled In. Wait, hold on. Phil Lester is the same person as Phil Lester, who we did last week. Well, I've started, so I might as well finish. Let's go, kids. Hi, welcome to Filled In. I'm Jack E. Chan. What's Phil been up to this week? Well, if you watched last week's episode, and I pray that you did, you'll know that we ended on quite a dramatic cliffhanger, where it turned out that that criminal who's been attacking Dan was actually Phil the whole time. And the fact that Phil was often in the room with the criminal at the same time when these attacks were happening is entirely irrelevant, and don't worry about it, kids. Now, I imagine most of you have spent the last 7 days on the edge of your seats, just waiting to find out what's going to happen with this cliffhanger, just thinking, man, I can't wait to see what Ben cooks up, and by cook up I mean reports on what factually happened, because of course these aren't made up stories, these are real stories. I can't wait to find out what happened. I can't wait to get that satisfying conclusion. So of course I'm not going to do that, we're going to ignore that part, and now I'm going to tell you about the time Phil started his own circus. It was 1993. Great episode of Filled In. I love a little throwback. By the way, if you have any suggestions for who I should cover on next week's YouTuber Watch, please let me know. Get in touch on social media, Bebo, Club Penguin, and just let me know, because as you know, we do a different YouTuber every week. And that is canon. Am I still in shot? Hi everyone, never done stand-up before. Yeah, who's seen this Momo trend going round? Pretty weird. This guy knows. What do you do for a living, sir? What do you do for a living? Okay, I don't know what that is. Do you have WhatsApp? You do. A demon told you to hurt yourself? You haven't heard of this. Has anyone heard of the Momo challenge? More like no-no, am I right? This doesn't seem to be... Don't throw things. Come on, man. This is the worst christening I've ever been to. Just turn that off and put that down. What were we doing? Right, that's the news then, isn't it? YouTuber, what you say? That it's always Dan Howell. Well, of course it's not. YouTuber, what you say? It's different every week. Yes, it's time for YouTuber Watch, and it's a different person every week. And this week it's beep boop boop Dan Howell. Just give the kids what they want. Welcome to Dan Howell Watch. I'm Jason Mraz, and I'm yours. What's Dan Howell been up to this week? Well, Dan, like any self-respecting teen, recently downloaded TikTok, the fun new app from the makers of Musical.ly. And he was scrolling through, following all the accounts you need to follow, Pop Buzz, Bentley Townsend, you know, just a random assortment of accounts. And then he thought to himself, hold on, I'm a creative guy. I love to make, and I love to bake. Well, I should make something of a TikTok of me and myself. So he got his camera up, he loaded up his favourite song, which is that song that goes, hit or miss, better never miss, huh? That one, favourite song, I know what that is. I'm cool. And then he decided to film himself doing a this, whoa, one of these, and even a bit of this. And he put the song on it, hit or miss, better never miss, huh? And Dan put it up and he said, "Now to sit back and watch all the ticks and tocks roll in. I'll be a TikTok millionaire by the end of the day." But Dan sat there and he noticed that no one was following him. He thought, "This is ridiculous. After all my years of success, I now know what it is like to be a humble creator starting from the bottom. Now we're here once again. This is a..." And then whoops. I nearly said that a criminal with a sword came in. Might have to censor that one, might we, folks? Then a criminal came in with the sword, and Dan was like, "This again, every week with the sword." And then the criminal took off his mask. "Hello there, mate. It's me, Phil Lester. Could it be the end? Question mark? Oh man, what a cliffhanger for this week's edition of Dan Howell Watch. Dan Howell Watch. Can you add piano music while I'm doing this? Oh, too far. Okay. There we go. Now it's time for YouTuber Watch, the segment where I highlight one YouTuber every week and tell you what they got up to. It's probably the most informative part of the show. As you know, it's a different YouTuber every week. I choose them completely randomly based on suggestions from you and also my algorithmic computer. Now this week, we've got a little up-and-coming YouTuber from Paraguay. It's a young lady. Oh no, sorry, it's a young boy. I've never heard of him before. Daniel Rodriguez. So, Daniel, oh sorry, I misread that. Dan Howell. It's time for Dan Howell Watch. Hi, welcome to Dan Howell Watch. I'm Nikki Blonsky. Wait, no I'm not, but she will be showing up in the show later. In fact, let's get a quick Nikki Blonsky update. Oh, as we can see from this live aerial footage, Nikki Blonsky is currently racing down the highway, racing to the studio. And hopefully she doesn't hit anyone on the way, but we're really excited to see Nikki. Good luck to her as she arrives at the studio. In the meantime, it's time for Dan Howell Watch. Now, what has Dan Howell been up to this week? Boy, howdy, has Dan Howell had a heck of a week. Dan Howell woke up on Monday last week and he said to himself, "You know, I just don't have enough yeehaw energy in my life." He'd been listening to Casey Musgraves the night before, he bought himself a fancy cowboy hat, but he did not have quite enough yeehaw energy. So he decided to book himself a flight to the yeehaw capital of the world. That's right, it's the US state that's synonymous with cowboys, cowgirls, and cow great times, New York. Hey, I'm walking here. So Dan went to New York, he was walking around in a yellow taxi. There was a big green lady holding a torch. There was a kind of pizza pie. There was a pizza rat, love that rat. But he was walking around, he's saying, "God blimey, I'm not really seeing a lot of cowboys here. I'm not really seeing a lot of cows. No, to be honest, I'm not even really seeing very many boys." And he thought, how will I ever get my yeehaw energy? And you know, at the end of the day, that was never really resolved. I mean, there isn't a lot of yeehaw energy in New York. You know, at one point he was walking along and he passed someone who had like sort of pointy thing sticking out of their coat. He didn't think anything of that, you know. He thought maybe if I go to this Outback Steakhouse, I mean, you know, that's not cowboy. And then a criminal came with a sword! Oh God, guys, there was a criminal with a sword again. It was a sword, it was a samurai sword. It was an absolute samurai sword, the kind that I keep on my wall in my man cave. And Dad said, "Oh no, not again! But luckily I've been training for this my entire life." And he broke out a special type of jiu-jitsu he'd been working on called Dan-jitsu, which is specifically designed to break a sword with human hands. And he lunged forward, he chopped the sword and cut off his own hand. He cut off his own hand, he hit it wrong, and his hand was severed. So Dan's got a hook hand now, and you know, it is what it is. He doesn't really have yeehaw energy, but he's got a lot of pirate energy going on, so yahara maharatis, let's go. This has been Dan Howell Watch. What's that? Nikki who? From Hairspray. Why would we have Nikki Blonsky from Hairspray on the show? Is she going to be on today's episode? Oh, we should have mentioned. The audience probably would have got a kick out of that. Oh, okay, never mind. This might seem like a weird time for me to brag, but I did read those Instagrams really well off the teleprompter just then. And I think that's quite impressive. Now it's time for YouTuber Watch, the section of the show where I feature one YouTuber every week and tell you what they got up to. Now this week I received a letter from a young boy who said, "Dear sir, please could you feature me on this week's YouTuber Watch? I'm a young boy of 10 years, not even 11, and I love to make videos with my good friend Phil. Please could you write about me and I will give you a shiny halfpenny. Yours in Christ, Jacksepticeye." So there we go, young Jacksepticeye's written in, so I guess we're talking about him this week. It's time for Dan Howell Watch. Welcome to Dan Howell Watch. I'm Benedict Townsend. I'd like to be your friend. What's Dan been up to this week? Well, at the time of recording, it's March the 14th, which is, of course, Valentine's Day. So Dan was out and about trying to find himself a date and some nice roses to give the date. Oh, it's going to be a wonderful romantic time this year, Dan said in his trademark voice as he walked down the street looking for a potential beau, or indeed bae. At that point, he fell down a manhole cover and entered the realm of the Rat King. Oh no, said Dan. I seem to have entered the realm of the Rat King. Now, I know what you're thinking. Is this rat going to be involved in the making of pizza, the redistribution of pizza slices? Absolutely not. This is a different rat. Not all rats are the same. I don't appreciate ratsists who think all rats are the same viewing my videos. However, there was a man, and did he have a sword? Well, let me put it this way, in an old Irish limerick. If the day was long and a man had a sword, is the answer yes? You know it to be true. And the man came at Dan with the sword, tried to cut off his head, but then Phil Lester appeared. All right, there's me, Phil Lester. It's time for us to end this narrative arc. You truly have been building towards this for a long time, so it's time for me to reveal my real identity. And he took off his mask and revealed who he really was, and it was very surprising and cool. Some of the best writing you've ever heard. This has been Dan Howell Watch. Wow, what a fascinating episode of Dan Howell Watch. We'll be talking about that for weeks to come. Kudos to the entire team that write that show. It's the same people who write Riverdale, which is why it's so good. Guys, I'm just kidding. I love Riverdale. It's got a gargoyle. It's got a man with abs who got attacked by a bear. It's got a guy who wears a hat. It's the perfect show. That's one less lawsuit for this week. Ah, wonderful. Bring me another coconut, please. I'd like to eat it whole. Oh God, put the background on. Hi everyone, it's me, Benedict, and I'm at the office. I don't take my desk with me on holiday. Today, we're gonna focus on an aspect of the show that you guys seem to really love, which is YouTuber Watch. So today, on a special edition of YouTuber Watch, I'm gonna tell you a brief overview of the life story of a certain YouTuber. Now, obviously there's so many famous YouTubers, who to pick. I went through my Encyclopedia YouTubia to see who it would be, and I think I've settled on someone who you're really gonna enjoy. He's 55 years old, he was born and raised in Paraguay, and he's not interesting or fun, but he does a lot for the local community. And so I'll be talking about him for the next 45 minutes or so. And his name is Dan Howell. Oh no, sorry, it's meant to be Pascal Rodriguez. Sorry, I got that wrong because obviously Pascal and Dan are next to each other in the alphabet, so I misread the name. Well, I've said Dan Howell now, so I guess I have to just proceed. This is the life story of Dan Howell. Please don't sue me, Dan. Dan Howell was born in 1955 in the little village of East Whinging to his mother, a school teacher, and his father, a sword maker. Dan was a precocious child. He would often wander around the playground trying to film himself with various inanimate objects, a rock, a stick, a broken camera, because at that point, vlogging hadn't been invented yet. But Dan was ahead of the time. He was like, one day, I will be a famous video boy. And they said, Dan, we've just had World War II. We don't need your nonsense. Get back to work. You'll be down the mines like the rest of them. Then it was 2015. And Dan said, finally, technology has caught up to my dreams and ambitions. I will become a famous YouTube boy. So we moved down to London, the home of videos, the Hollywood of London. And it was there, he was standing at a bus stop, and a man came up to him and said, right mate, you look like a bit of a solid bloke. I'm looking for a roommate. Do you want to live with me? He said, oh, I don't know, you're a total stranger. Why would I want to live with you? He said, my name's Phil Lester, I'm 16 years old, 6'7". I love long walks on the beach, moussaka, and tumbling around with good friends in the mud. Dan said, I don't really like any of those things, but you seem like a nice fellow. I will become your friend and sometimes video collaborator. This Dan Howell voice is very tiring too. Anyway, then they became friends and Dan started his YouTube channel, which was called Smosh Games. And Dan started putting videos on there, and within a matter of months, he had over 100 subscribers, becoming one of the most popular people on the platform. It was around this time that his father got back in touch. Son, it's me, your father, a famous sword maker. Now, I'm just getting in touch because where am I from? It's not clear. It's not clear. One of my swords was recently stolen by some kind of, how to describe it? A man who does crimes. A crimeman. A prison lad. A criminal? Yes, I suppose you could say a criminal. What I'm trying to say is there's a criminal with a sword out there, and I think he's coming for you. What is happening? Why would that be the case? I don't know. And then he left. Well, Dan was in a real pickle now because a criminal with a sword was after him, and that's bad because swords are famously some of the sharpest things you can get attacked with, aside from words. They can really sting. I should know I've received many cease and desist letters from Dan Howell. Anyway, smash forward. Not flash forward, smash forward to 2019. Dan's going about his business and he keeps repeatedly being attacked by a criminal with a sword, as you'll know from watching YouTuber news. And this came to a head when one day the criminal took off his mask and revealed that he was indeed Phil Lester. Phil, how could you do this to me? You are my greatest friend and ally. We play Dungeons and Dragons together and other activities. Dan, I'm so sorry to betray you like this. You're my oldest friend. Dan's 65 years old. You're my oldest friend. But I had to do this because in the future you will grow up to be an evil overlord, and I've traveled back in time to eliminate you to prevent that from happening. Makes total sense to me, said Dan. Couldn't make any more sense. It's astounding how logical this story really is, from beginning to end. If someone made up this story, God, they'd be the best storyteller in the whole world. J.K. Rowling, dirt on the ground compared to the man, or indeed woman, who could write a story like... Yeah, I get it, said Phil. Christ, you really go on. Just stop talking. I need to kill you with this sword. I wouldn't be so sure about that, said a voice from behind them. But, said Dan. Oh, said Phil. It's me, Shane Dawson. I have come to resolve this whole story arc. Could it be? Yes, it is. I just explained that. Don't doubt me. I have also come from the future. The teleprompter has just turned off. That's how long we've been going. Not there's anything on it. I have come from the future as well, and I discovered that evil Dan in the future is not you, Dan. He's your clone. Cloning exists in this story now. And I have killed your clone. He was being puppeteered by an evil rat named Ratatouille, and now the future is safe. You mean I can finally put down my sword, return to a normal life of making wholesome YouTube-based video? You can indeed. And it looks like my work here is done. Shane disappeared into a cloud of chills. Well, that ends well, said Dan. Finally, I can go back to a normal life. Mainly, I need to send a few emails to the guy who hosts YouTuber News, my favorite show, and congratulate him on his very good stories, which are good and not bad. Also, I guess I'll just stop doing this voice all the time. I don't know why I was putting on that high-pitched voice. It's not the voice I do in my videos. I guess I was just doing it for a lark. And then they all went home and had some lovely ice cream. And that is the life and times of Dan Horatio Howell. The end? Yes, it is. Until next week, of course, when I'll make up report on a whole new story. This has been Dan Howell Watch. What do you think? Long enough? Some people think art is some kind of painting, or some Mona Lisa, some Michelangelo's David. And quite frankly, no, because art is not a physical thing. Art is an emotion. Art is a reaction on a child's face in the wind. Does that make me an artist? Yes, of course it does. But does that also make me a model? Yes, and I am available for work, and please get in touch. Now it's time for an ever popular part of the show, YouTuber Watch, the part of the show where I focus in on one YouTuber and tell you what they got up to this week. Now, last week we did Dan Howell, and as you know, we never repeat YouTubers on this show, so we won't be covering him again. And this week we'll be doing, that's right, Markiplier. That's right, it's time for a Markiplier Minute. Welcome to Markiplier Minute, I'm Dan Howell. What's Markiplier been up to this week in 1 minute? Well, it's been a heck of a week for Markiplier. First of all, he went along to his local forest and chopped down a tree, intending to make himself a wooden bath. While he was there, he found an amulet that contained the secrets of the universe. Nah, he said in his deep voice. Nah, not for me. It's me, Markiplier. And that wasn't Markiplier just now, that was me doing a very good impression. I am not interested in any amulet or any silly adventures. What am I, Dan Howell? I don't have that kind of life. I have a normal life. So he ignored the amulet, he ignored the tree in fact, and went back to his home, to his loved ones, and played some video games, watched some TV. Because the thing about Markiplier is, he doesn't get attacked with swords all the time, right? He's not that kind of guy. He's a regular YouTuber, he's a good bloke, he does stuff for charity. And he had a pretty good week. And then he got abducted by aliens. What? And the aliens were fish? Guess we'll have to find out what happens next week. Markiplier Minute. Wow, great installment of Markiplier Minute, everyone's favourite show. Guess we'll have to find out what happened? Never, because as I've said 1,000 times on this show, we never do the same YouTuber twice. You'll never hear about Markiplier again, just as you'll never hear about, what was that guy's name? Dan Lester again. You know, recently we've been talking a lot about hashtag love the rat. This week we've been talking about a guy who very much loves the cat. So that's character development. Don't say we don't move things along on this show. Next week, I guess it'll be like Love the Horse. I guess we're just gonna get steadily bigger animals until it's Love the Blue Whale and we can just shut this whole mess down. Now it's time for a segment called YouTuber Watch, where I focus in on one YouTuber and tell you what they got up to this week. Now, last week we had a Markiplier Minute, you guys enjoyed that, and before that, can't remember who we covered. But this week, actually, tell you what, why don't we let our new friend Mr. Rat tell us who we should cover this week? Mr. Rat, who do you think? Oh, where's he gone? Jason! We've been over this, man. Don't scuttle on me. Can't stay mad at you. You're a plastic rat. It's time for James Charles Safari. Hi, welcome to the James Charles Safari, the show where we go on an expedition to see what James Charles has got up to in this grand savannah we call the YouTube world. Well, let's hop in our little Jeep with open sides, get our binoculars, but not our poaching rifles, and trek into the bush to see if we can spy some James Charles news. Well, James Charles had a pretty normal week, as he always does. He woke up, put on a full face of makeup, took some Instagrams, and then bought himself another piano. And whoa, what's this on the right? It's a lemur. A lemur of James went to Starbucks. And as we continue our journey, our guide puts his hand in the dirt and goes 3 miles that way. It's the news that James bought himself a new phone case. Oh wow, and now we get to the watering hole, by which I mean James made a video. This premise is incredibly strained. I think the entire bit is going to fall apart any minute. But James made himself a video, and it was him doing makeup, and caca, what's that? The vultures are circling, but it's not for James, it's for me, because this joke is dead. But I gotta keep going. And what's that on the horizon? Oh my God, it's beautiful. It's clear, fresh water. I know we're at the watering hole, but don't worry about that. Clear, fresh water and palm trees. It's everything I need. It's comedy. It's a perfect little bit of comedy. That's what this segment desperately needs. But as I draw closer, I realize, no, it's an oasis. It's an oasis, no! Oasis! Oasisters, more like, because this has been a James Charles Safari. What a great episode of James Charles Safari, everyone's favourite show. But of course, we'll never return to it again because, as I've established many times, we never cover the same YouTuber twice on this show. It's always someone different every week. So say goodbye to James Charles forever. Bye-bye, James. Never see him again. And next week, we'll be doing Dan Howell. How could this possibly be gifted to something weird?
What's that, Rat? You think he was killed by the FBI in collaboration with the Mafia and the Cubans? Well, agree to disagree. Either way, Abraham Lincoln was a hell of a president.
Now it's time for a very popular section of our show, YouTuber Watch, where I focus in every week on one YouTuber and tell you what they got up to. Now this week, in celebration of our 100th episode, The Big Hundo, we've decided to dig into the YouTuber News archives, which are of course located in a nuclear bunker deep beneath the icy wastes of Portugal, and find an ancient clip from one of the very first episodes of YouTuber News, way back in 1556. It's time for a very ancient Dan Howell Watch. Forsooths, and welcome to YouTuber Watch, the show where we tell tales of sightings of YouTubers as they go about their lives. This week, Sir Rotherington Howell was walking down the street to buy himself a brand new plague rat when all of a sudden he was accosted by a gentleman carrying a sword. Now, of course, this being the past, it was entirely normal that he had a sword. Nothing weird about that at all. What was weird is the fact that he pulled the sword upon him like some kind of scurvy knave and said to him, "You are going to perish today, sir." But luckily the man then immediately died from a very simple cold because, you know, it's the past, it's the olden days, and everyone is just so weak. And Sir Rotherington Howell gave a big laugh, ha ha ha, and he said, to celebrate, I'm going to sire a generation of Howells who will go down throughout history, making things, doing things, and having a fringe. And maybe one day I will have a young great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson, and his name will be Markiplier. This has been YouTuber Watch. Wow, what a great historic episode of Dan Howell Watch. It's amazing to see how much stuff has changed in those 500 years. For example, we now have a tablecloth. Apart from that, basically the same.
One of the most impressive feats I've ever seen since I saw a horse lasso another horse. Never clear why that happened. Why would a horse need to lasso another horse? It's not natural. It's not what nature intends. But my God, it was beautiful. I'm gonna ride off now into the sunset and let your hush there Englishman return to the show. Giddy up. God damn it, come on. This is so slow. Hi everyone, it's me, Benedict. I had to leave the room for a second. Was there like someone else here with like a perfect cowboy voice? Must have been my cousin or something. 5 years of drama school, 3 years of dance, right? Thousands of pounds I paid, and not a single penny was wasted. Do you remember when this used to be a news show? Me neither. So the ye stands for yes, and the horse stands for horse, because you're saying, yes, horses. I agree with that. Now it's time for YouTuber Watch, the section of the show where I focus in on one YouTuber and tell you what they got up to this week. And we do a different YouTuber every week. We've been over these rules 1,000 times. These are ironclad rules. We never cover the same YouTuber twice. This week, it's Dan Howell, with some yee-haw flavor. Howdy, welcome to Dan Howell Watch. My name is Cowboy. What did Dan get up to this week? Well, Dan was out there on the range trying to find himself some dinner by killing an antelope. And so he was riding along on his horse with his lasso in the air doing this the whole time. And then as he was cresting a hill and he looked over across the mighty savannah of the wild west, he saw himself something glistening in the sun. What on earth is that? Said Dan Howell in his famous voice. My God, I gotta stop smoking all these many cigarillos. I'm wasting away. But I believe I can see down there something glistening in the sun. Possibly some kind of old weapon, like some kind of long knife or something, or like a long spear, or I don't know, extended dagger. I can't really put a word to it. And he decided to ride down and see exactly what this man was and what that shiny thing was upon his their hip. So he got there and he said, "Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. My name's Dan Howell. I was just wondering what was that there thing upon your hip there, sir. I can't make head nor even in fact tail of it." And the man turned and he had a wry smile and he said, "Sir, I do believe you have made a grave mistake there, sir. For upon my hip is none other than a sword, which I am going now to use to kill you. For I am a criminal man who does crimes." "Oh, good lordy lord," said Dan. I don't know what to do. Then he died. This has been Dan Howell Watch. Tentative applause for that episode of Dan Howell Watch. I've never had Cowboy host the show before. I don't know if he's the best storyteller. I mean, I feel like that story spiraled out of control almost immediately and never regained control, but it doesn't really matter because as we've established, we will never cover Dan Howell again. We never cover the same YouTuber twice. So say bye-bye Dan, bye-bye, bye Dan, because you'll never see him again. He is effectively as dead to us as he is in that story, and that is a historical story, so rip. Sell, bye-bye-bye. And I'm bankrupt. Now it's time for YouTuber Watch, a popular segment where I zero in on one YouTuber and tell you what they get up to this week. And of course we do a different YouTuber every week. You never hear the same YouTuber twice. I don't know who Dan Howell is, stop mentioning him. This week, a very special story. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. Hi, welcome to Jeffrey Star Wars. I'm Captain Kirk. What has Jeffrey been up to this week? Well, Jeffrey Star was hanging out on his home planet of Tatooine with his best friend, a big dog called Chewbacca, and they were going about their business living under the Galactic Empire, when Jeffrey said, "Whoa, what if I made some makeup?" So he went along to the shop and he said, "One makeup, please, space makeup." And the man said, "That'll be $500. And he said, $500? That's such a small amount of money, I throw it away in the morning. When I've got $500 on me, it just weighs me down. I just chuck it in the gutter because $500 is an inconsequential amount of money. I would spend that on anything. I'd go on tour for that kind of money." And the guy says, "Listen, buddy, I didn't ask for your space life story. I just asked for $500 space dollars." So he bought a makeup and he went home and he did his makeup. But who was there but Dan Vader? And he had a sword, but it was a laser sword. See? Oh, this story changes every week.
Oh, Jeffrey, I am your father.
And he said, "Bane? Is that Bane from Batman?"
Yes, it is, Bane. All that really matters is our plan.
Bane, you don't belong in this cinematic universe.
Oh, the YouTuber Watch cinematic universe is diverse and makes no sense.
And then I guess they all died. This has been Jeffrey Star Wars. Wow. Worst one yet. Truly abysmal content. TAC. That's tack, baby. In conclusion, no matter how many people you surround yourself with in this life, you're always ultimately alone and will succumb to the void. Moving on. Well, yes, but you have to draw a line between Marxism and Stalinism. I mean, ultimately, Stalin was a totalitarian dictator, and the actual remnants of real communism and socialism were kind of lost under his reign because it was all just about power and dictatorship. But then again, you've always said that. Now it's time for YouTuber Watch, a popular segment where I zero in on one YouTuber every week and tell you what they got up to. And I do a different YouTuber every week. We've been over this. I will never do the same YouTuber twice. And this week, I'm going to go back to my supercomputer, I'm going to auto-generate who it's going to be, and it's Dan Howell. It's time for Dan Howell Watch. Welcome to Dan Howell Watch, I'm Tana Monjo. What's Dan been up to this week? Well, as you know, this week we had the release of probably the most important piece of media in our lifetime. The trailer for the new Sonic the Hedgehog movie, and the eagle eye among you will have noticed that although Sonic is a digitally created creature, he is played and motion captured by an actor, and that actor is Dan Howell. Dan was in the studio for 10 months, acting as Sonic, living and breathing as Sonic. Before that, you may have been wondering, where was Dan in the year 2014? He went AWOL. He was actually living among hedgehogs in a small hedgehog community in Greater Hull. Well, now he's playing Sonic in the film. He's saying Sonic's famous catchphrase, "I'm a speedy boy, I'm gonna go real speeds." And he's painted himself blue, he's got fur all over him, and the trailer is probably one of the most nightmarish things I've ever seen in my life. Well, anyway, Dan was hanging out one time on the movie set with Jim Carrey, who plays the villain in the film, and of course, Matt Damon, who's playing a car. And he was saying, I'm just not really sure about my motivation in this scene. I've got to go, and I've got to go at a certain, with amount of speed, but where am I running to? And more importantly, what is Sonic running from? And Jim Carrey was like, shut up. God damn it, will you just shut the hell up? I'm sick and tired of you talking about Sonic all the time. So annoying. But Dan's like, but he's blue, but does that mean that he's emotionally sad, like he's feeling blue? And Jim Carrey's like, shut up, man. Christ, it's a Sonic movie. It's not like it's the Mario movie. This isn't important. And Dan's like, well, I had all this fur surgically attached to my body. I've gone all in on this. Have you? And Jim Carrey had already left at that point. He had stuff to do. So in conclusion, I think it's going to be a wonderful movie and probably win all the Academy Awards, particularly for set design. This has been Dan Howell Watch. Could we do some editing to make it look like I'm going fast? Zap, zap, zap.
God, he had a goddamn sword and he tried to get Dan, and Phil came out of nowhere and he hit him with a hammer.
It was a criminal!
It was a criminal, he had a sword!
I was not expecting that twist.
No, neither was I until I said it.